risk taking is out of control. Like people lose everything, and then like, whatever. Like I'll make it back. So I'll make it back tomorrow. It was like, if you were working trading for Morgan Stanley, you're down 5%. That's a terrible year.
Hello and welcome to WSJ's Take on the Week. I'm Miriam Gottfried, and joining me today is my colleague Alex Saeedy. He is a banking reporter, and he has the distinct honor of sitting right next to me in the newsroom. Welcome, Alex.
Hello, Miriam.
So welcome to the show. We have bank earnings season coming up. These days, things are going really well for banks. They are making a lot of money, and every time there's a major global event, it seems like they're finding new ways to profit off of it and be right in the mix. We also have talk of deregulation of banks, so you could say that banks are quietly booming right now. And on that topic, we have a really exciting conversation today, and we're in a larger space to host that conversation, because joining us are two people who have worked inside banks who are now translating that experience for a TV audience. Today, we have Mickey Down and Konrad Kay, the co-creators of HBO's hit financial drama Industry. Industry focuses on the lives of 20-somethings working in banking and finance. The show's fourth season premieres Sunday, January 11th, and everyone, especially my husband, is really excited about it. Welcome, Mickey and Konrad.
Thanks, guys. Good to be
Thanks
here.
for having us.
Welcome.
So you both worked in banking, as I said. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience and why you thought it would make for a good TV show?
Me and Konrad, we met at university. We met at Oxford, where there was I had absolutely no intention of going into finance when I went to university, but there's a sort of culture there, especially at that time, 2008 actually, just post 2008, where there was still a drive to get, I suppose, smart young graduates into the financial services industry. And there was they would come and they'd court you and they'd take you for dinner, and eventually you'd find yourself working at one of these places. I was very ill-suited to it. I'll let Konrad speak to his own experience, but I found it I found it difficult. I'm not a mathematician, but I did find it a sort of a fascinating place. And I worked at an institution, 200, 300-year-old institution, surrounded by people who, had a lot of people who had their class entrenched in them, and it was a really type A personality world, and it was, I worked in investment banking, so it was a much more slightly more cerebral, slower pace than Konrad, who worked on a trading floor at Morgan Stanley. But I just felt like, there's fascinating people, they're all incredibly motivated, and motivated by the same thing, which is sort of avarice, money, success, ambition, and that just makes for a really good drama. And then the reason, our way into the show was, obviously you've seen that world portrayed on TV and in literature and film before, but our route into it was from the bottom up, which is, the people with the least amount of power trying to accrue power, which is kind of what opened the show up for us.
Mickey said I worked on a trading floor, so he did IBD. I worked in European equities for a year at Morgan Stanley, then I sold American equities. I was just very, very, historically bad at the job. Like when I was made redundant, my boss, who was an Italian salesman, he was like, "I really like hanging out with you. You're the worst salesman I've ever worked with."
What was it like?
A total inability to, there's a bit in season 2 of Industry where Robert has this kind of phobia of picking up the phone. I had exactly the same thing where I just had a kind of stage fright. I didn't like the feeling of picking up a phone to talk to an expert about something which I knew nothing about. It kind of pinched my stomach in a really weird way, and I just couldn't do it.
We've never worked on a trading floor, but we cover finance day in, day out. We know how boring it can be at times, but also how electric and dramatic it can also be. And I think you guys have done a great job capturing that, certainly in the early seasons on the bank floor. And I do want to ask, season 4 is coming out. We are spending less time at Pierpoint in this season than in past ones. And we're actually looking at a lot more of, the entities that are disrupting banks these days. There are fintechs, there are crypto firms, you have short sellers, you have the media involved. I guess, I'd like to understand a little bit more why you chose to focus on this part of the financial universe in this season, as opposed to, the core ground of banks where industry has taken place for so many seasons so far.
Well, there's a couple of things. There's practical reasons, there's sort of creative reasons. Firstly, obviously, we were writing from experience. The first season was this slice of life show. It was kind of a YA show about young people entering a workplace, and that workplace just happened to be something that me and Konrad had done. But it was kind of universal. It was this is what it's like for a young, ambitious person to leave university and go and work somewhere which is very, cutthroat and energetic and frenetic. And that was the energy of season 1. But because the characters had very little power, that's inherently quite anti-dramatic because they can't actually drive story. So by the time they got to season 2, we expanded it to the point where they were actually able to drive story, drive decisions. And Harper, for instance, her relationship with Jesse Bloom actually opened up her character for us because we were like, this is the person that when she actually has a goal, she's the sort of person that has her foot on the accelerator in order to achieve that goal. And that's sort of what the character became. And then as the seasons continued, season 3, there was a shift to Yasmin, and it reflected, a sort of very quite different take on what it's like to work at Pierpoint from the perspective of someone that isn't like Harper, someone that's a little bit more, like a deer in the headlights. There was more soapy elements in season 3, and it's always been a reflection of what me and Konrad are interested in and want to write about. And in season 3, it was ESG and inclusion.
Right.
And we thought that was a kind of
And bank failures.
And bank failures. And
very of the moment.
It was.
Yeah.
And the practical reason is, we never know whether we're going to come back for a season. So we just blew the whole precinct up at the end of season 3 and we destroyed Pierpoint. So when we came back to season 4, we were like, what does it look like if we have a completely different institution that we're looking at? And it just felt quite right given, what's happening in fintech and tech in general to sort of be in the nascent stages of a bank.
This is a thrilling season, without giving too much away. There's a lot of drama, and I would say a big theme is fraud, right? And last year was a huge year for fraud. I think a lot of people didn't see it coming, but there were the unexpected collapses of First Brands, Tricolor, the subprime auto lender. Jamie Dimon very cryptically warned there are cockroaches lingering in the financial system. And I'm curious, what do you guys think about fraud, given that you've worked in finance?
A big theme of the season was storytelling. And so that's, and the link between kind of identity, entrepreneurship. One of our writers had this really good line of basically if you're a criminal and you get away with it, you're an entrepreneur. So there's a sort of fake it till you make it energy which the show has had the whole time. And I'm not saying that it's not as reductive as saying that all entrepreneurs are criminals or vice versa, but there's a kind of gossamer thin line between
for
people.
Sure.
And the Elizabeth Holmes thing is a really good example that we talked about, in terms of I'm sure there's a way she rationalizes to her to the failure of the company or its success, the idea of she just wasn't given enough runway because eventually it would have become successful.
Right.
And I think again, not to get into spoiler territory, but one of the characters definitely believes that if we can reach terminal velocity, it doesn't really matter what we did in the past because we're going to be a success in the present.
Right.
I think that's why it's interesting to focus on tech as well, because it's a conflation of business and cult of personality, which I just found really interesting, and that is kind of at the core of what a fraudster is or a con man is.
Right.
It's someone that just can tell a really compelling story.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more about the next season of Industry with Mickey Down and Konrad K.
All right, so coincidentally, the biggest banks in the country are reporting their earnings. We have JP Morgan on Tuesday, followed by Goldman Sachs and Citi. One of their biggest and best performing businesses right now are what we call their Wall Street arms. That includes trading and investment banking, where both of you guys have a pedigree in. And it's something that people want to understand more. It's half the reason you created the show, right? There's a kind of an innate curiosity about how this kind of opaque and powerful industry works. And I wanted to ask you guys, maybe we can start with your background in sales and trading. What makes a really effective salesman in the highest echelons of Wall Street? And beyond that personal level, what, in your opinion, builds a great sales and trading franchise and differentiates them from one another?
You're asking the wrong thing. couldn't have two worse people.
Yeah, exactly. I think if we knew that, we wouldn't be sat here.
Should we ask you what builds an unsuccessful sales and trading?
Inability to pick up the phone.
I actually know some quite successful sales guys still, and I think they would say, because I've actually spoken to them about this, just personability, really, genuinely. One of my good friends is a sales trader at Barcap, and he's very good at his job, but his is really, it's just he effectively always explains it to me. It's about trust, right? So in your stomach, so you're doing a big equity block. you immediately know without even thinking about it who that guy's going to be because you've spent so much time face to face with them, or because you've taken them out on enough dinners to know enough about their wife or their kid, and it sounds really basic, but it's a person to person business.
Yeah.
And so like he says that basically all of his best clients, best trades just come from having really intimate personal relationships with people.
Right.
Which I could never foster because I'm a very antisocial person.
It's television. But it's interesting, right? In such a quantitative industry, right, about dollars and cents, it's actually like humanity. I quite like in the new season, there's short selling as like a really big new alternative pathway some of your characters are going down. What do you find interesting about short sellers? And what was it about them that you wanted to showcase in the season? Because I agree, they're a fascinating group of people. We have a colleague who's writing a book about Hindenburg right now.
Well, it was actually very useful for us because it gives you you'll see when you watch the season that a lot of those investigative, again, not to go into spoiler territory, but a lot of the investigative strand starts to feel a little bit like a procedural or like a police show, really. And that idea of investigation and the idea of like a clear, to be reductive villain in the show.
Yeah.
When we thought about the short selling community and what they were trying to do, what they were trying to expose, it's incredibly televisual and dramatic.
Absolutely.
It's how can we're going to stake something, it's going to be us against the world, it's going to be the thing, and Mickey said, the war, there's a wall of people saying one thing because they're incentivized to via capital, and we're going to be a lone voice that's going to say the exact opposite thing. We're going to stake our reputation on it, we're going to stake money on it, and there's going to be a ticking clock because there's literally, when we put the trade on, the timing is everything.
Right.
So like there's so much, from a dramatic point of view, you've got the investigative strand and you've got the ticking clock. So it was kind of like catnip.
I think people have often said that it's very difficult to root for the characters in the show, but this narrative construction has actually allowed you to root for someone for the first time. There is a scrappy underdog story at the center of this, which just hasn't been the case before.
But I think their moral ambiguity is like what makes the characters so interesting.
Definitely,
They're neither good nor bad. They're just trying to succeed in this world.
There's a character, I won't, again, go into spoiler territory, but like later on in the season, a character gives a speech to that effect saying, my motivation and principle is the profit motive. I'm not here to basically be didactic about the sort of morality of the thing I'm looking at. I'm here to make money.
Right.
And I think that's quite interesting as well, because in the same way that when we explored ESG in season 3, there was a question of like, are they sincere when they're pursuing these sort of directives, or is it just another way of making money in 2022 or whatever it was? I feel that's the same thing here. It's like, do I care about the fact that this thing is a societal bad, or do I actually just want to make money out of it?
I cover private equity. You see a lot of people from leaving the banks to work in private equity to make more money. Maybe they're going to hedge funds. Maybe they're going elsewhere, starting their own firms. Do you think banking has lost its appeal to some degree for young people, or it's like less cool as a place to work?
It's funny because I said before that the people I know that are still in it are these relationship people. But when I actually like knuckle down in it, I know very, very few people in banking now. Everyone that I started with has pretty much gone to private equity, hedge funds. And it's I think there was always that kind of like lily pad stepping stone towards that world, but I think even more so now. No one wants to, be involved in. People want to feel like they're entrepreneurs in this industry. They want to feel like they're working for an institution.
The biggest banks are huge behemoths now, so you're like a cog in the machine, and I think the show really reflects that.
I think as you get older, people really don't like to have that feeling of being part of a wider superstructure. They feel like they want to be self-starters, or even if they're working brutal hours, they want to feel like they're doing it on their own terms.
I just wonder, like, does this talent drain, what does this mean for banks? I mean, I'd be interested in your thoughts on it too, Alex.
Yeah, you guys highlight the culture problems at some large investment banks, right? It's not a place that often empowers you, especially in the earlier years. And we've seen like private equity firms, right, more aggressive in their recruiting tactics. And now they're more alternatives. But it seems like, nevertheless, the promise of riches, right, and to take someone who maybe came from a very modest background and catapult you towards the higher echelons still draws people, I think.
It's still a great starting salary.
Right.
It's still
it's a stepping stone.
Leagues above what you're going to earn as a startup or a junior at a law firm or a journalist or whatever.
For sure.
Definitely.
there is a level of, even though you talked about the cool factor, or like, it's not like the 80s. Like my dad worked for Salomon Brothers in the 80s.
Yeah.
And that was like, Michael Lewis,
that
kind of time.
Yeah.
That was a sexy job.
Yeah.
And that was like, the stories of the trading floors, the pictures from the trading floors, the cigarette smoke. There was an allure to it. And I guess the sheen really came off that,
after 2008,
to some extent. And by the time me and Mickey was sat in those banks, I think the luster was definitely kind of off it. But equally, like, there's a certain, it appeals to a certain type of person to work for a blue-blooded institution.
Yeah.
Right.
Like Morgan Stanley, JP
Yeah.
Morgan. The names, for better or worse, carry a weight to them. I said this to Mickey a million times. I've said it in multiple interviews, but like, as a 21-year-old carrying around a Morgan Stanley gym bag felt a bit like driving a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Because it was like a
Yeah.
No,
But you
know
were
what I mean.
flashing a status symbol.
I'm
Yeah.
saying God because I totally believe it, and I felt
Yeah.
exactly the same
Yeah,
thing.
but
Yeah.
it was a way of conferring status to
Yeah.
people
Yes.
when
Yeah.
you yourself had no idea who you were. So
Yeah.
it was insanely seductive.
It was identity.
Yeah.
I could walk into the pub in my nice suit and tie and say I work for Rothschild.
Exactly.
Yeah.
People take me seriously
Right.
for the first time in my life.
Do you think the show's made people more or less interested in a career in finance? Because like it shows, such some of the scenes are just so painful to watch in a way, but like I heard that Oliver Stone's Wall Street actually made people more interested in Wall Street, even though like the characters were seen as being despicable.
Absolutely.
Well, absolutely, because I mean, anything on this ilk, anything said in this world has to feel very seductive in this first act, because you have to basically convince the audience to think that these people are having a great time, and you have to lean in, and then the third act is usually when it all goes to hell, and you reveal that the person's pursuit of this thing is actually not going to be edifying. It's actually going to be, it's going to destroy them. And a lot of finance bros just watch the first act and just think, okay, that looks fun. I
That
can
looks
take
great.
drugs and have
Yeah.
lots of sex, and that looks like rock and roll. And they don't really watch the third act where it feels like it all implodes. And I think it's weird because I still get LinkedIn messages. I check LinkedIn probably once every 6 months to see what's going on down there. And there's usually a slew of messages from people being like, bro, love your show, got me into finance. Like some guy told me he went to do an MBA because of the show. And
Wow.
Which is fun. I mean,
I think there's a level of there's a level of dishonesty as well with the way people engage with this thing. I think where they watch Wall Street or they watch industry and they say these people are sociopathic, they're dead-eyed. When in fact what they're really saying is like, I recognize parts in myself that I haven't necessarily nurtured or I'm too scared to think about. But like those traits, avarice, blind ambition, they exist in everybody.
Yeah.
So it's like they're part of the human experience, the spectrum of experience.
No, totally.
So, like,
I mean, I was thinking the characters are borderline sociopathic, in some scenes for sure. And a lot of my experience watching this show is like my husband watching it and me watching over his shoulder and then having to like literally walk away because it's like too painful to watch. Sometimes I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this. But like your characters really seem to thrive on this risk taking, even though it often leads to their own undoing.
Right.
But like it made me think about like the risk taking that's become like so common in the culture of young people today. Like, with people getting so into the meme stock craze and like crypto and Polymarket and betting, like, do you think all those things sort of like feed the interest in the show?
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think it's like kind of this thing. It's like this meme stocks and like Polymarket, that feels like it's sort of democratized finance for a lot of people. But what I've seen is that, as you said, like risk taking is out of control. Like people lose everything, and then they're like, whatever. Like I'll just make it back. I'll make it back tomorrow. It was like if you were working trading for Morgan Stanley, you're down 5%. That's a terrible.
You're like on your way out.
People are down like 200%.
Yeah.
Right.
Young people as well have this this real. I'm talking about the generation behind us and the one behind that, this idea of like clout chasing, right? So it's like you need to be rich as quickly as possible. There's no like
they're impatient for the riches,
but like impatient for like riches beyond, because then it
Yeah.
has to go. They're comparing themselves to these YouTubers who are like crashing Lamborghinis for likes and stuff. It's like that kind of relationship to money. They're like, why? Like they got that in a week. Why can't I get that in a week?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Our generation made loads of excuses for wanting to be rich as well. I think the millennial generation and so it wasn't very.
Right.
Cool.
You had to have a social purpose
You
behind
had to have a social
right?
purpose behind it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. If you couldn't just say I want to make money in the
For
way
money's
that-
sake.
It's a Solomon Brothers 80s version.
And that has really roared back.
Yeah, it's come back.
Yeah.
The last 10 years. It's
Yeah.
kind of
we
worse than
we had
ever.
dinner with quite famous hedge fund manager a few years ago, and he said like he would never recruit millennials because they had this weird relationship with money, and he would only recruit Gen Z people. But he said half of Gen Z doesn't give a damn about making money and sort of doesn't make excuses for that, and half of them are just what Konrad said, this sort of secure the bag mentality.
Purely profit motivated.
Everything's profit motivated.
Yeah.
And,
Everything is for clout. Everything is how quickly you can put it online and get laid or whatever. I'm being serious. It's
No,
like,
yeah.
it's a pretty simple system these people are following.
That's definitely reflected in the characters.
I would
in the
agree.
industry, yeah.
Yeah.
So, Alex, you've written a lot about the lives of junior bankers in a series of articles that kicked off in 2024. And one of them followed the death of a B of A junior banker. And it showed that some junior bankers are working 100 hours a week or more on a regular basis. And I couldn't help thinking about industry when I was reading your articles. How closely do you think the show matches your reporting?
I mean, I would certainly say some of the experiences in season 1 had some eerie similarities, both in the experience of these really hardworking youngsters. It's often the ones who are from the less privileged backgrounds who are doing double time to prove they belong. It was very eerie in some ways how similar the story you guys told was to the reality of a situation that happened in New York in 2024. And I guess, just briefly, I mean, there was a death of a banker in London in 2013. I think it was an intern. Did that inform some of your storytelling?
It happened a few times as well.
Yeah,
while we were
it's
there.
happened several times.
And it feels like, I think that's one of the things that people were most shocked by. I mean, obviously we were depicting this world where everyone is incredibly ambitious and they're working very long hours, and that was kind of alien to a lot of people. But the idea that actually you're going to, lose your life because of this ambition, I think was just really quite shocking. And I think that kind of was a route in, because, you can say what you want about the characters, they're sociopaths or whatever, but we wanted to show there are stakes, that kind of ambition.
Totally.
And we didn't want to be didactic. We didn't want to say, do not go into it. It's not a PSA.
Right.
Don't go into banking because this is what's going to happen to you. But it was good to show actually, there is a version of this.
This can happen.
Which
Yeah.
can happen, yeah. And there's a version of this which is going to hollow you out. In
Right.
your reporting, have you found that there's been any kind of evolution in work-life balance?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say that there are some institutions that have proactively tried to put in place formal guardrails that will ensure, okay, you need to make sure you're only logging these many hours. If by Thursday you're already above a certain threshold, we're going to try to pull you off of more work. And I know people at institutions where that has actually helped them. I know another bank where they actually put in place new rules after our reporting about how the old rules weren't working, where now there's actually a formal complaint mechanism that juniors can activate when they feel like their superiors are overburdening them with work. And I've been told this is actually helping people feel like they have a lifeboat when that wasn't there previously. At the same time, these are formal systems we're talking about. And banking and many industries, right? It is a culture, and it is mostly created by people who've been there for a really long time and who feel this sort of need to have people progress through their careers as they themselves did.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have one final question for Mickey Down and Konrad K of Industry.
So we've talked a lot about the pathology of your characters, and I want to put a hypothetical to you guys. How do you think two of the more cutthroat characters in the show, Harper and Eric, how do you think they would play the Venezuela reopening trade? Do you think, would they be willing, to maybe look past a few sanctions, try to talk to some people close to the government? How do you think they would approach, a Trump trade in our day and age?
I think there's an evolution in attitude towards what the characters are doing throughout this season, which is really interesting. And you'd have to ask me, is the Harper and Eric at the end of season 4 the same as the one at the start of season 4, and would their reaction to that trade be the same? I'd say from where we leave them off in season 3, Harper would absolutely do that trade. And she would have absolutely no moral compunction at all about that trade.
I was in the gym. I was texting Mickey about this when he was traveling. I was just like, there's this really old guy, I have no idea who it was, who's on Bloomberg TV, and he's talking about investment opportunities in Venezuela. And I was like, this is, something in the pit of my stomach was just so reviled by the whole thing.
Yeah.
I found it actually, and I very rarely get a reaction like this, I just found it so disgusting that I was just, the idea of it, I think it's kind of abhorrent.
But it is the trade everyone's trying to get in on right now.
Sure, and it's the nature of the world, but if you don't take stock of this stuff and pause sometimes. What's going
Absolutely. Right. No, then the ceaseless chase after money,
is
you kind of forget
just the monetization of the event is crazy.
Yeah.
That's just
The
amazing.
financialization of everything over the last 20 years is crazy. And like, if you don't think that if you can't see the negative side of it, then I can't help you.
That is the operating system that we're exploring in this show as well. Like people who would behave like that and are always constantly chasing money. So I think without that, there wouldn't really be a show. So.
Right. It's a 21st century nihilism, and you guys do a great job at depicting it.
And with that, we're going to have to wrap it up.
All right.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much
guys.
for joining us,
Thank
Mickey
you so
Down and
much.
Konrad K.
Thank you.
I don't want to spoil anything, right? Yeah. But I thought this sort of like younger, enterprising person, I saw a little bit of myself
Oh, it sounds
in a way.
lot like you, Alex.
That's good.